Press conference called by Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. My name is Joe Venus. I'm the current president for the next 8 days, and then Brent Mayer, who's our president-elect, will take over. This was Brent's brainchild. He's put a lot of research into the statistics that support why the bail reform package filed in the Texas State Senate and the governor here in town supporting are one-sided and don't tell the entire story. So with that, I will turn it over to Brent Mayer.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you all again for being here today. My name is Brent Mayer, M-A-Y-R. Bail is not to be used as an instrument of oppression. That has always been the law in our state for over 150 years. Even the late Justice Scalia, a conservative icon, stated that in our society, liberty is the norm and detention prior to trial is the carefully limited exception. We're here today because Governor Abbott and the legislatures are trying to pass some draconian laws to turn that on its head, to take Texans, arrest them, lock them up, throw away the key, and allow them to sit in jail while they're waiting for years before their case goes to trial. Why? In this press conference that Governor Abbott is about to have at Crime Stoppers of Houston today, he's going to be publicizing the cases of individuals who've been allegedly victimized by other individuals while out on bond for other offenses. The problem with that is, as shown here in these statistics, violent crimes were only allegedly committed in 0.088% of the cases. I'm going to say that again. We're talking about 0.088%, not even less than 1%, not even less than 0.1% of felony cases filed here in Harris County involve these allegations of people committing offenses while out on bond. Here's the reality. The reality is that looking at these same statistics, in 2024, nearly 40% of cases were dismissed or dropped by prosecutors after individuals were arrested, forced to come to court, put in jail. In nearly 40% of those cases, charges were dropped. And that's the real story that needs to be highlighted. That's what we as the Harris County criminal lawyers are here to highlight, is the fact that what this legislation is going to do is it's going to take individuals who are legally innocent, it's going to allow them to be locked up and denied bail, only to sit in custody and possibly be one of these 40% that end up having their cases dropped after 6 months, after a year of sitting in jail. There are legal mechanisms in place right now in our law that allow prosecutors to hold individuals in custody who are out on bond and commit new offenses. We don't need new legislation that's going to make it easier to deprive Texans of their liberties, that's going to allow the law to take people, lock them up, and throw away the key. The law is in place, written into the Texas Constitution, so that if a person commits a violation while out on bond for a felony, the prosecutors, the elected district attorney and prosecutors are able to present evidence to convince a judge to keep that person locked up and not get another bond. We don't need new legislation that is just going to continue to deprive individuals of their right. We are asking on behalf of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association for the public to not be swayed by these stories of these very limited number of individuals, and to be mindful of the situations that happen when people are placed into custody and held without bail, or held because they cannot afford to make bail, only to suffer horrible consequences. We've highlighted cases of individuals who have lost their lives while in custody. The ACLU is holding another event today highlighting those events. And it's important that people recognize that people lose their jobs, they're not there to support their families, they lose their houses when they're locked up. And when prosecutors drop their cases after 6 months or a year, they're forced to pick up the pieces and go on with their life after having been locked up. It's not right, it's not fair. We don't need to pass laws that are going to change that. So we ask the public to please remain mindful of this. Do not be swayed by these efforts by the government and by Greg Abbott to try to change these laws to make them in a way that they are detaining people of their liberties. It is not to be the norm that we lock people up just when they're arrested. If they're convicted, it's a whole nother story, but when a person is charged, they're to be presumed innocent, and we're asking people to be mindful of that and not be swayed by this legislation. That's it. Joe, you want to wrap up?
Kind of on that same note that Brent just ended up with, what we're talking about here is the mere allegation that somebody's broken the law. What people need to understand is they're exponentially more likely to be one of the 40% of people who are charged and later dismissed than they are the less than 1/10 of 1% of people who are a victim of somebody who's on bond. As Brent pointed, and it's also noteworthy that people who falsely accuse others of crimes, practically nothing ever happens to them. So if somebody has an axe to grind with somebody or there's a child custody case going on, they can very easily call the police, and that's all it takes to get somebody arrested. And then when it's proven that the crime they reported didn't happen, they're never charged with a crime themselves, so they face no consequence. Meanwhile, the person who was accused faces all the repercussions that Brent talked about earlier. Also, as Brent pointed out, it's noteworthy that these laws are in place to address already. The Texas Constitution addresses the limited, the less than 1% of these cases that happens. It's Article 1, Section 11B of the Texas Constitution. If you commit a felony while on bond for another felony, you can be held without bond with very little evidence. The judges don't need this expanding legislation that all it will do is make it easier to hold people without bond on a mere allegation of a criminal offense. I also want to point out that Brent compiled these statistics not from any source that we have. This is straight from the Harris County DA's office website. So these statistics are available for the public to view, and this is according to the prosecutors in this jurisdiction. What this bill will do, in addition to imprisoning falsely accused people, is it will be an extraordinary expense to the taxpayer. Right now in Harris County, as many people know, we can't even afford to house the inmates we currently have. The Harris County taxpayers are spending millions of dollars a month to ship inmates to other states, to Mississippi and Louisiana. That means the other counties in Texas don't have room for them either. So what's going to happen to the taxpayers when we have to increase that money, that number of inmates? Our taxes are going to go up to support a law that we don't need, because the laws are already in place to address the issues that this law is supposed to affect. So, with that being said, does anybody else have anything to add?
I think that's it. We'll just take questions.
Y'all have questions?
Does anyone have an example of a client where bail was an issue for them?
I tried a case last year where my client was charged with aggravated assault and capital murder and sat in jail for years on those allegations. The only witness to that case ended up getting charged by this DA's office and by the United States Attorney's Office across town, and that was it. They ended up trying him on another case that they thought they could make, and a jury found him not guilty. So he spent years in custody on 3 serious felony charges, and finally, after 3 years, he was able to go home to his family with not being convicted of anything. And that's just a recent example that I have. I'm sure others up here have some.
That's just waiting to go to trial. We had another member who talked about a client who was arrested on suspicion of possession of a controlled substance. He was booked in, held in custody for over 6 months. After a lab finally got around to testing the drugs, determined they were not drugs, not controlled substances. He was released from custody after being detained for 6 months. In that 6-month period of time, he lost his job, lost his place to live. No one was there to support his family. And he was denied bail when there was no reason for him to not be entitled to be released. That's the kind of consequences that we're worried about with the passage of some of these laws that they're trying to push in Austin. Anyone else want to?
I know you and I have spoken about a past client which allegations were made. He was given a dollar bond that was agreed to by the district attorney's office and the defense and the judge, and then false allegations The complaining witness made additional false allegations. His bond was denied under 11B, and he spent 2 years in custody for the district attorney's office to ultimately dismiss every charge against him.
Do any of you think that there's a particular court that would abuse this, or?
Well, we're talking statewide. So, we obviously don't know all the judges in all the 256 counties here in Texas. So there's going to be at least one somewhere, if not here, then in some other jurisdiction that this law will affect. And if you're talking about a rural county where somebody doesn't have a lot of resources, and kind of like where Brent was talking, where it's a drug case and they have to, maybe their local police doesn't have their own lab and they have to send it off to DPS and it has to wait in line, that just increases the amount of time that they're sitting in jail and they can't get out because they have no bond.
And could someone walk through how you calculated the
Brent.
0.088%? Like, what number did you divide by?
Right. So
Show me your math.
Yeah, this is good math. So like Joe said, these numbers come from the district attorney's own dashboard. We've given the site in our press release. But what you have right here are all the cases that are filed in 2024. It breaks it down by felonies and misdemeanors to total out to be 101,000 of those cases. What you have down here are the number of dismissals. Now, they're broken down by category, and 67% is the total number of dismissals divided by that number. That's pretty simple. But a lot of these dismissals are because there was a conviction in another case, which, okay, there's been someone's overcome the presumption of innocence. Other times there's been a pretrial diversion. Those are the bulk of those. So what we did with the numbers is we removed those and we just looked at the other cases that were dropped because of insufficient evidence, because of lack of probable cause, because a motion to suppress was granted, because of a request of the complaining witness, and that's how we came up with the 39% out of the total number. As far as the 0.08% number, what you have over here is a dashboard that they created for bond cases to highlight, as you can see right here, it's kind of small, violent crimes committed while defendant on bond for one felony. And you have it by individual courts. We added up all of those numbers, we divided it by the total number of felonies that were filed, and that's how we came up with the 0.088%. So the numbers are there, you can check the math. My mom was a math teacher, I know what I'm doing. So you can check all the math here. These numbers come straight from the DA's website and really highlight this is not a significant problem as Greg Abbott and the legislature are trying to make out. Anything else?
Can you state your first and last name?
Yes, Brent, ready? Brent Mayer, M-A-Y-R, pronounced like the mayor of Houston without the O in it.
Yeah, sure. It's Joe Venus, and the last name's V-I-N-A-S.
Okay. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Yeah.